Broadcasting from the KC Coyote Studios, you're listening to Kearney Live on 102.7 KPGZ. Kearney Live is presented by Kearney Trust Company. Kearney Trust, 310 West 92 Highway in Kearney. The phone number is 816-628-6666. And now here's the hosts of Kearney Live, Mike Davis and Jim Dickerson.
I don't know why that makes me laugh. It's the only place I can come and get a round of applause at the beginning of my workday.
And I'm so surprised that there's that many people here on the day before Thanksgiving. But for all of you guys up in the studio, in the balcony,
we see you.
Yeah. Good job. What's your shirt say?
Yeah.
I can't wait till. Huh. Okay, I can't see it. We'll look at it later.
That's a rough crowd up there. There's no doubt about it. Last week they were throwing popcorn at us, and they've got some bigger something up there that they're about ready to heave down on us. Not sure what that is. It's a good thing, by the way, Jim.
It is.
That we have Will Akin, Captain Will Akin of the Clay County Sheriff's Office with us in studio today, and we're going to bring him on here in just a minute. We wanted to cover, however, a couple of things here on Kearney Live that... one of which is of great importance, I think, Jim, to you and me, and perhaps a few football players, because we love the football. But I did want to mention that the Suburban Blue Conference, all conference teams are out. And a couple of these fellas on here made first team, and we want to congratulate Evan Miles for first team offense, and Corbin Bevan for first team defense. A couple of guys that... it's really great to see, by the way, an offensive lineman, Evan Miles. Good job doing that. And Corbin Bevan was in just darn near every defensive play that I can recall throughout the season, Jim. I don't know about you, but
I remember several.
Number 33 was front and center. And then Jacob Stevens, second-team offense, and John Walters, second-team offense as well. And then a host of honorable mentions, if I may. Gavin Smith, tight end, Ian Acosta, quarterback. How about that? Love it. And Jesus Ruscher, offensive lineman, and another offensive lineman, again, Evan Pace. So nice job for the big guys up front. Appreciate that, and congratulations to all of you. And it just makes me proud to be able to make these announcements.
Yeah, congratulations to all those guys. Great job this year, and like you've probably seen, great time with the football, but now it's time to turn it over to the basketball guys. So those guys take over. I think the first game is the 6th of December. So those guys will have it, and then we'll have the live coverage. I say they will have the live coverage on the 6th. So make sure you tune in.
Dan Herman and Andy Martins for the play-by-play action. And if you haven't listened to that, I got to tell you, Andy Martins, I don't know why I'm surprised every time I hear him, but that guy does an amazing job. Basketball play-by-play runs, shall we say, quite a bit faster than football. Now, Jim Dickerson does a terrific job on football play-by-play. But I got to tell you, man, if you haven't listened to Andy Martins call a basketball game, it is a thing of beauty. And I advise you, listen to those guys, Dan and Andy, just tear it up on the play-by-play.
Yeah, they do a great job. And I think one of the reasons why it's so funny to talk about, because it's a couple of years ago, we were doing one of the football games. We were getting ready to do, it was going to be the first year for the basketball, and they were coming in and taking a look at how all the engineering worked and the technicalities of commercial breaks and all this, that, and the other. And Andy was standing there going, I don't know if I can do this. It's been so long and blah, blah, blah. And he went through all these things. So we all kind of,
that was a setup.
Yeah. Because the first game, he'd be great at a poker game, because the first game we were like, oh my gosh, this ought to be something to behold. It was the greatest thing I've ever heard. So ESPN called the next.
That's what scares me. Somebody's going to come along and grab this guy.
And one more sports thing, and then we'll let it go. See, I'm wearing my little Royals.
I saw that.
Because the Royals transition is complete.
Wow, and how exciting is that?
And the only thing I'll say, and then we'll let it go, because it really isn't Kearney related, but it kind of is, because it's Kansas City, right. Kansas City Royals, is the owner said he's committed to winning.
As if something like that needs to be said for a professional sports team.
I don't think we were committed to that these last few years.
Well,
that's all I have to say about that. We'll pick that up in April.
Well,
but you know what does
what if you lose a lot? Does that mean you're committed to losing? I mean, does anybody ever make that announcement? I'm just curious.
So, what I'm committed to is the Shop Local campaign here in Kearney.
You better believe it.
And so now, as usual, here to talk about the Shop Local campaign is Mike Davis.
Well, I don't want to use too much time up because we got a great show coming up with Will Akin, and we're going to learn a little bit more about his personal life, and we might just get ultra personal with him here on the air. But nonetheless, the Shop Local campaign is something that is quite important to Kearney because, as you know, if you keep your money at home, it works hard for you in the way of infrastructure in schools, in parks, and doggone it, it's fun doing business with people you know. Brian has a video set up that, as you know, many of you who've been watching on Facebook, we will do a Shop Local pledge video about once a week. And we've got one that we set up this week with the Paisley Candle Company. So bring it on, Brian. Let's have a look.
Hi, this is Brian Watts with 102.7 FM here in Kearney, Missouri, and on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce and the Shop Local campaign, I'm here at Paisley Home and Candle, and I'm talking with Melissa and Amanda, and I just want to ask you guys, why is it important for people to shop local?
Well, we just want everyone to shop local because it keeps the money here in our town. And everything in our store is carefully selected to be fun and exciting for our customers here in Kearney, Missouri.
When you shop locally, you support Kearney businesses who in turn help make our community a better place to live, work, and play. Our schools, parks, neighborhoods, and charitable organizations thrive as a byproduct of hard-working local entrepreneurs and people like you who choose to do business with them. Your Kearney Chamber of Commerce encourages you to shop local in Kearney.
And what makes Paisley Candle and Home unique to local shoppers?
Well, we make all of our candles and wax melts right here on site in small batches, so they're all hand poured. And we have carefully selected every item in the store for our customers here in Kearney, Missouri. We appreciate you more than the big box stores.
And we took the pledge.
And welcome back to Kearney Live. So if you get a chance as we go into the shopping season, and don't forget Black Friday is Friday, but it's supposed to be one of the busier shopping days of the year, but we know that no longer applies because of the online shopping and what everybody does. But if you get a chance, you've got 25 plus 3 plus about 30 days till Christmas. So make sure you do, when you do, you shop local as part of the Shop Local thing. But we were over there at Paisley, and we've been in a couple other places. I will say this about the Shop Local thing is a lot of these places have a lot of unique things that you cannot get really online. I mean, I guess you could if you search for it, but if you actually walk through, and we'll use Paisley as a good example, they have a lot of stuff over there that you just wouldn't think to look for. So if you can, shop local and do it here in Kearney. Your tax dollars stay right here. And so now let's move on to our guest, and I'll let Mike Davis do all the introductions. Mike, take it away.
Paisley Candle and Home is the name, and I just want to make sure I get that correct.
Oh, what did I say?
No, I said Paisley Candle, and I think we shorten it, and they're okay with it as long as you're shopping there.
Paisley Candle.
You bet.
And Home.
Yeah, we love them. Will Akin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me back.
You listen. You're welcome. There are guests we have on this show that I get particularly excited about speaking with, and you happen to be one of those. And I think you've got a really interesting story that we have not really been able to share in the depth that I would really prefer. So we've got a lot of questions. Your publicist has provided us with some questions that will help maybe shed the light on an interesting life that you've led and where you are right now. But I would like to have you mention, because I think it's important, that you'll be running for sheriff. And I want to give you right up front here an opportunity to speak somewhat about that. And then we'll get into the personal stuff.
Okay. Yeah,
The mic is yours. There you go.
Running for sheriff of Clay County in 2020. The campaign is going exceptionally well. I've got a great team that's working with me, have a large amount of support throughout the county. And when I talk about my community, I talk about the entire community, the entire county of Clay. I've been fortunate enough to be connected with every single municipality as well as throughout the rural areas, and it just feels like home. So I'm looking forward to it.
Indeed, it does. And you've got a ton of experience that you bring to bear, not just with the sheriff department, the sheriff's office. I got to get that right. But you've got quite a bit of background, military and so forth. And you were a chopper pilot in Afghanistan. Is that correct?
Well, not in Afghanistan, but I was a Black Hawk helicopter pilot when I was in the Army.
There you go.
Was in the Army for 8.5 years. For the last 4.5 years, I flew helicopters. But it wasn't until I was 26 when they diagnosed me with adult onset asthma and told me I couldn't fly anymore and find a new job.
They took the fun out of it.
They
Wow.
did.
Well, that's impressive nonetheless, and I think that was one of the things that we talked about the first time I met you, which is really cool. I do want to, Jim. You just moved up to the mic.
Well,
Jump in there.
As a lot of people know, when we have different people in here, and especially people that are running for office, I've been known for asking the hard-hitting questions, and I want to jump right into it. Captain, if I might, what does one have to do to get a publicist? Because I don't have a publicist. Do you have a publicist?
No, we have to make our own publicity, and sometimes it's not good.
Curious, how does one do that?
Well, there's an extensive process that you have to go through. It costs a lot of money, about $0 a month, and a lot of volunteer time. So if you can find somebody like that, man, they're going to help you out a lot.
I got you. I have no more questions. Mike, it's all yours.
Well, here's a question, and this is hard-hitting. I'm told you had the third grade best smile.
Yeah.
Now, and I can see right now you're not in third grade anymore, but man, you got that smile working. How on earth? And who would vote for such a thing, and why is that the third grade voting on a smile? Tell us.
I have no idea, but you know what I really wish I had was that certificate to prove that.
Right.
And,
exactly.
Everyone was being called out and they were getting the honor roll certificates. And then they invited me up and they said, okay, for the best smile of the school for the entire year goes to William Akin. And I was like,
Love
what?
It. Well, I thought maybe it was sponsored by a dentist or something like that. Yeah.
People ask me, hey, how long did you wear braces?
Yeah.
No, these are natural. No braces,
Nice.
no work. Yep.
Yeah. Well, we got that out of the way, and that was at the top of the list, just so you know. So that's how we're going to start this thing off. In all seriousness, though, you came from, humble beginnings doesn't even begin to describe it. You were homeless for a while, and listen, I need you to help me with this. You're a very humble guy, and if you don't give me the story, I'm going to keep digging. So tell us a little bit about that. We don't all, it's a horrible thing when you think about it that anybody's homeless. But when you see people who are in a position where you are now and you came from a beginning like this, tell the folks about it.
From what I remember, we were homeless for about 2 years. And, I didn't really think that I was homeless. It wasn't until years later, and actually when I was attending the FBI National Academy, where my professor said, you were homeless, because we had to write a story about our life. Mm-hmm. When, my recollection of that time frame was I got to camp every night. So we were living in our car, not on the streets. And it was just my mom and my brother. And, every night we would sleep behind the company that my mom worked for. And then every morning we got egg McMuffin sandwiches from McDonald's, and then we would go to school. And when we were out in the playground, I would see my mom sleeping in the car, so I felt good. And then when school was over, my mom would pick us up and we would go to the park, and we got to play outside for the rest of the day. And then we would go, when my mom went to work for night shift, my mom or my brother and I would sleep in the back of the station wagon.
Wow.
And I think we were probably, it was like ages 8 to 10. So I was between ages of 8 and 10. My brother was 3 years younger than I, so 5 to 8.
Right. And I think, again, as you point out, that what I find so fascinating about that is that you just thought it was normal. And, kids are pretty resilient. And I think even the way you talk about it, looking back on it, it was kind of fun. You're camping out, you're playing in the park, your mom is close by, kids just want to make sure that their parents are there. And, that whole thing is all a matter of perspective.
Yeah.
Now, I would imagine that you've taken that perspective throughout your life. At some point, you just say, you take what comes. And you've been in some tough situations. And, I'm looking here. It says that you went to work at a young age and you dropped out of high school to provide for your family.
Yes.
Now, that's, this is the sort of thing that books are written and movies are made out of. But talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
You went to work to take care of your family in high school.
I was always driven, and it wasn't for money necessarily, but for the things that we didn't have. Because when, even before we were homeless, we lived in an apartment, but it wasn't a nice apartment. And I remember having memories of my mom crying at nighttime because she didn't have anything to eat. She was trying to feed my brother and I. And so when I was 12 years old, I started working, and I was climbing palm trees with a chainsaw almost as big as I was. And I was plastering houses, or at least being the laborer for carrying concrete to the mixer, and then laying carpet in hotels and learning those kind of skill sets and those trades. And I liked it. I liked working. It was way better than going to school. And, kind of progressing from there, I got my first job when I was 13 years old, making like $3 an hour. I don't know. It was something ridiculous, but it was making money.
Right.
And I was able to bring that home to my mom and my brother. My dad left when I was 3, so never had a father figure growing up. Mm-hmm. So I was kind of taking that responsibility on my shoulders and just being the provider. Right. And so did that, worked a lot. But then when I got to I hated high school. Oh my gosh, I hated school.
Mm-hmm.
Quite different today, but I'm sure we'll get to that.
Sure. Right.
But no, my senior year, I thought, you know what? School's getting me nowhere. I want to work. And so I dropped out. At that time, I was working 3 jobs. I was delivering newspapers in the morning to about 200 houses. And then in the daytime, I worked at an agricultural manufacturing plant, and I was the delivery driver. So at 17 years old, I was delivering multi-million-dollar pieces of equipment to farms in Southern California.
Wow.
So a lot of responsibility there. And then when I left there, I would go and deliver pizzas at night.
So you were dealing with providing for your family, sort of living in the moment. I have to imagine that there might have been a teacher or two that saw that you left school and said, "Hey, what are you doing? You can't do this." Did anybody step in and try to get you back in school at that point in your life?
Man, yeah. I had 5 teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And they started with me my freshman year, and they knew my circumstances. They knew that I didn't like school. And every time that I wouldn't show up at school, I would either get a phone call at home, or they would actually show up in my front yard, knocking on the door saying, right, "Get dressed, get in the car, and let's go to school." And so I hated it back then. I was like, man, why are you doing this to me?
Right.
But years later, it's interesting because I still remember them. I call them the 5.
Wow.
And I actually looked them up, and I was able to find my history teacher, who is now the principal of the high school that I went to. And I wrote a letter thanking them for everything that they did for me that I didn't realize back then. But it was an opportunity for me to finally say thank you to the people who kind of really made an impact in my life and who I looked up to. And for years, I carried guilt because I thought I let them down. They were very special people in my life. 2 had already, I think, 1 had already passed away. Another one they lost contact with. But then I noticed when he replied back to me several weeks later, there were still 2 on the email thread that he carbon copied.
Wow.
So
yeah,
they made a huge impact in my life.
Yeah, in the spirit of a true educator, we're visiting today with Will Akin. He's Captain Will Akin of the Clay County Sheriff's Office, and we're talking about his personal life as well as his candidacy for sheriff in Clay County. Stay with us. You're listening to Kearney Live.
programming heard on KPGZ is being underwritten by these local businesses.
Simplify your banking, simplify your life. It's easy with Kearney Trust Company. The world has become fast-paced, and we understand that you are busy. That's why we offer a banking experience that's as simple and stress-free as can be. Kearney Trust goes beyond convenient locations and good customer care to offer banking services that make managing your finances quicker and easier than ever before. Online, bill pay, e-statements, and mobile banking are available to give you a positive banking experience so you can get back to your life and activities. Kearney Trust also provides capital to people and businesses so they can achieve their goals. Whether you know exactly what you want or just need someone to talk to about your dream, you can speak with them and work on that dream. You may just be getting off the ground or ready to move into your brick and mortar building. Kearney Trust will provide you and your business with the resources you need to succeed. Kearney Trust Company is your partner for success with 2 convenient locations in Kearney at 310 West 92 Highway and 701 Watson Drive in Price Chopper. The phone is 816-628-6666. Kearney Trust Company. Banking you can trust. Member FDIC.
That was Jim Dickerson clearing his throat on the radio.
I'm sorry. I've been trying to get over this cold for like 3 weeks
We're
now.
paid professionals.
Yeah, and
you should know better.
A good producer, Brian, is supposed to leave my mic off until
I
get my lung taken care of. But
going to blame Brian.
Hey, but you know what? I haven't said it yet. Happy Thanksgiving, Brian and Mike.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate it. We have
I don't want to leave anybody out. No. But listen, everybody. Hey, just to follow up on what Will was saying, said, it's kind of funny, and I don't have a story to even touch that. As we said in the break, I was like, I got nothing. But it is very interesting to see that the impact that teachers make in your life, because I think every single person can think back and think of a teacher or teachers that did something that significantly impacted them. And so often the teachers don't get, you hear about teachers don't get paid enough and they have to do this and they put up with this, that, and the other. But we all too often forget the impact that they make in someone's lives. And the funny thing is, when they do it, a lot of times, I don't think they realize they've done it because it doesn't come to light until several years later. So like in this case, and I know teachers that I dealt with that made an impact in my life didn't really become apparent until, many, many, many years later. It's not that it didn't come up till many years later. You just didn't quite realize it till many years later. Well,
age brings wisdom. And I think as we become a little bit older, we recognize we gain the wisdom of what those educators did for us. And it's impressive. And when you think that it is not the highest paid profession, and they're horribly underpaid, I don't think there's any question about that. But teachers, educators, folks who have gone into particularly, I guess, public school. We have probably one of the best public school systems here in Kearney on the planet, and yet, you wish you could double their salary at the bare minimum for the work that they do, and it truly is a labor of love. I mean, a lot of these people, and we hear it all the time, are spending their money, their own money, for class projects and things like that. So. It doesn't go unnoticed, certainly. But
so as we go into this Thanksgiving, to all you teachers and educators out there,
thank you,
you
bet
very much. And then, along the same lines, shifting gears a little bit, the kids. It's hard to tell a kid because a kid doesn't know what they don't know.
Right.
And you think you think you know everything until until you get older, and then you realize. Oh, I'm not as smart as I thought I once was. My parents, when I was, I think it was 15 years old, were idiots. When I got to be about 20, 21 years old, they suddenly became brilliant. Yep. I don't know what happened there, but You try to tell. So in your story, which I think is amazing, I just, there are no words for it. I question my own sense of being. Brian's giving me the move along. But the interesting thing is you went from where you were and you got to do things, and we'll get a little more into it, but you kind of mentioned it. You did things and are doing things that it isn't like you were forced into that path. That's some really, flying a Black Hawk helicopter, there are a lot of people, me included, who would love to do that. There are, your work with the sheriff's department and the things you've done there, sheriff's office, sorry. The things you've done there are people that would love to do that. They would love to do that. So what advice do you give kids? Because I know you talk to kids a lot. What advice do you give them to say, hey, look, don't give up now because, you're only 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, whatever the case may be. You've got all this stuff in front of you can do.
I know it's easier said than done, but just be patient. No matter how hard you think it is right now, you'll persevere at the end, or not even at the end, you'll persevere through it, and then you'll become a better person afterward. And then you'll be prepared for the next challenge, and then just keep preparing yourself for the next challenge. And when you overcome those challenges, you're stronger and you're much more resilient, and
right.
You have more wisdom.
You, after the teachers were trying to drag you back to high school, you ended up in the Army. And tell us about the transition then from working so hard to support your family through high school as a high school dropout. Then you went into the Army. Talk about that transition.
So that transition had a lot to do with, just living in the neighborhoods that I lived in. Really rough. And it wasn't until a friend of mine who had shot a guy, to steal his motorcycle.
Oh.
And it was at that time, and there's a lot of things additional to that, but that was the kind of like the pinnacle. I thought, I'm going nowhere, and I'm going nowhere really fast. And so after that happened, I went to the recruiter's office and I said, I need to get the heck out of here. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, you can't leave until you get your GED. And I said, okay. So I went right over to the adult school, signed up, took the test, and a month later, I was going to basic training.
Right. When you took the GED, did you feel like, oh gosh, I wish I had studied, or did a lot of it just come natural for you, or was that difficult?
I was really nervous over the writing portion, mm-hmm. and I had been out of school at that point for almost a year and a half.
Yeah.
And I guess I went into it just hoping that I would make the bare minimum so I could get my GED and leave.
Right.
And what's really interesting is about 20 years later, I looked at my scores because I still have it. And I read them wrong. I read them incorrectly when I first got my scores back. And I thought I barely passed. Mm-hmm. Well, I actually scored on the upper end.
Oh, awesome.
And so for 20 years, I thought, man, I just barely squeaked by.
Well, just fast forward to right now, you will be receiving your doctorate, a PhD, this December 2019, correct?
So it's a Doctor of Education,
right?
And my last day of school is December 7th, but my research is complete. I've already defended my dissertation, mm-hmm. and the degree will be conferred to me in May of next year.
Outstanding. So, congratulations.
Thank you.
I just, that's so important. And of course we made a big major jump fast forward, and I want to pick up in between, but I think when you talked about, you persevere, you solve the problem in front of you at the time. You achieve the victory of everything that you overcome, and you use that as a springboard to the next challenge, which I think is, in a sense, it sounds like the way that you just made your way through your life to where you are now, running for sheriff. You're a captain at the Clay County Sheriff's Office, a leader of others in law enforcement, and you do a ton of work.
And I think the big key there is, mm-hmm. just because you're down doesn't mean you're out.
Right.
No.
Ever. And we talk about, we've talked about it on this program. We've talked about it on all sorts of different stuff. Just never give up. No matter what you're doing, do not give up. Keep going.
That's right.
And you're they ought to have a poster with you on talking about
no doubt about it. You got you followed up after your GED, after you joined the Army. You got your undergraduate degree, you got a master's degree. And then again, as we talked about, finishing the doctorate here in December, which is just remarkable. I just think it's fantastic. And you've also done, I know we can talk about your time in the military, and let's just talk a little bit about that, just kind of pick up where we left off after post-high school.
All right. So joined the military, and I enlisted as a parachute rigger because I wanted to do something airborne. I'm afraid of heights, believe it or not. So I've got close to 100 jumps out of a high-performance aircraft, did some skydiving, flew helicopters, but I'm still afraid of heights. I can't go rock climbing with my kids without having a near panic attack at the top. But I wanted to do something to overcome that challenge, right, or overcome that obstacle. And I loved it. Anything airborne that was afforded to me at that time, I did it. So I was a jump master. I was a pathfinder. I did a lot of stuff, airborne operations related. And going back to the education piece, I do want to say this.
Sure.
I didn't want to go back to school. There was 9 of us that went to our first duty station, and they were all talking about how they're going to fast track and get promoted and stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, me too. And then when they said, oh, I'm going to this school and that school, and I was like, wait a minute, what? I got to go back to school?
Right.
I don't want to do that. Out of all 9 of us, I was the only one to finish my associate's degree, which allowed me to become a helicopter pilot. And so I filled out the application and got accepted and went to Fort Rucker, Alabama for training. And from there, South Korea, where I lived for a year near Uijeongbu, and then came back to the States, lived in, Watertown, New York at Fort Drum. And then that's when I got out.
Yeah. I mean, I can't. It's such a remarkable story, and
and I'm doing a calculation here. Let me see. You had how many jumps?
About 100.
A little 100, and that puts you about 100 ahead of me. Honestly, I'm not afraid of heights necessarily, but I wouldn't jump out of an airplane, helicopter. It could be on fire, and I'd probably ride it all the way in. Again, more of a man than I. Let's move on.
I also see you're a post commander of the Liberty Memorial VFW Post 4043. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So I know you're doing a lot of work for veterans, and you've been awarded the Law Enforcement Commendation Medal from the National Society of the Sons of the American Revolution in recognition of outstanding achievement and dedication to the maintenance of law and order. Wonderful. Another accolade. And these things just don't, people don't just bestow these things upon you because you have a nice smile. So you've obviously done quite a bit of work for law enforcement and working with your colleagues, obviously. But I think you're doing some work for kids. You do some public speaking, and you get around to sort of share this story with kids who might potentially be, going down the wrong path, shall we say. Talk about some of the work that you've done for some of the youth.
Oh, man. So every opportunity that I get to speak at a high school or a school or, just a place of education, I take that opportunity because people tell me I have a story to share. So
indeed, yes, that's the understatement of the day.
And if I can share that with the kids, depending on where they're at in their life and what they're thinking, every opportunity. So I've been able to talk with kids at Northland Caps, which is made up of many different school districts.
Right.
The Liberty School District. I've been invited to the Job Corps in Excelsior Springs, and just looking for other opportunities to talk to more kids in whichever city that's in Clay County, whatever school district.
Right. I think you have, obviously, you've had an unconventional pathway to success. And I think it's often, as Jim pointed out, when you're younger, you don't have the ability to sort of, do the right thing always. And because you think you know so much, and the way kids can be at times. Do some of the kids, I'm curious about how they take your story. And do you get a chance to sort of talk with them after the if you're going to a speaking engagement, do they come up to you and ask you questions, or what is their response to your story?
I think if we had 2 additional hours, every single student, well, I'd say not every single student, but a lot of them would stop and talk with me.
Yeah.
I always stay after the presentation to just be there to answer any questions if they do have extra time, and just, kind of share some more information with them. But the students, they received me very well. In fact, on Monday, 2 days ago, I was at the North Kansas City Hospital, and I was meeting with the Northline Caps medical strand. And I acted like, okay, I'm here to talk about personal safety and awareness, going into the holiday season and stuff like that. But I have a guest speaker, and I'm going to read his bio. And if you like him, I'll go out and I'll get him and I'll bring him in here and I'll introduce him to you. So I acted like I was reading my bio on my phone and I was telling my story, and I go, okay, does this guy sound interesting? Would you like to meet him? And they were like, yeah. So I went outside the doors. I came back in and I said, hello, my name is Dr. Will Akin. And they're just like, what?
That is so cool.
Yeah, it's a good lead in.
Well, and I think even kids who are pretty good students have a tendency to maybe have some doubts about where they want to go, what they want to do. And I think that that message, the pathway, is different for so many kids. Talk about that a little bit, because I know we all knew those 1 or 2 really, really good students in high school that found their way, and it just seemed like it was just the path was cut so clearly for them. But for the rest of us, we all struggle a little bit with what to do, how, what we want to do, number one, and how we get there.
Right. I think it's a rare exception that a student knows exactly what they're going to do.
Yes.
They go into it, they follow that path. But I think the greater majority of students, they think they know what they want to do until they experience a fraction of it. And they go, ooh, I don't think I want to do that.
Right.
And so I kind of share, don't be afraid to go and try new things and to, broaden your horizons. And I'll use my middle son as an example. He was in the Northline Caps medical strand. He wanted to be a nurse, work his way up to nurse practitioner, and got accepted to Truman State University. And that's what mom and dad wanted him to do. Great job, son. And he came home one day and said, Dad, I want to join the military.
Yeah.
I was like, what? Never before did he talk about joining the military. So for about a year, we went back and forth. And every time he said he wanted to join the military, we talked about school. Why didn't you want to go to school? And then vice versa. Well, he made the grown-up decision. He said, I want to go into the military, and he joined the Army. And he's been in the Army for a little over 2 years, and he's in infantry, currently serving his country in Iraq on the Syrian border, which is kind of nerve-wracking. But,
sure,
the soldier dad side of me is like, yes, son, serve your country. The dad side of me is like, son, I spent 3 years in the Middle East. I know exactly what you could potentially face, and just be prepared. But he's doing exceptionally well. And I think students who go into, their junior, senior years with an open mind, I think they have an easier time. But there's also that challenge of, okay, well, my mom and dad want me to do this.
Right.
And, I just, for the parents out there, I'd just say, hey, kind of,
encourage
your kids to let them make their own decision.
Right.
And so I'm going to throw this in there. My 14-year-old now, who for years wanted to he talked about being an engineer, now wants to go in the military because of Big Brother and Dad. And Mom's going, I want you to go to school first.
Yes. We're visiting with Captain Will Akin today. You're listening to Kearney Live. Stay with us. We've got a lot more of his story to talk about. We'll be right back.
A special thank you going out to underwriters like these for their support of KPGZ.
Simplify your banking, simplify your life. It's easy with Kearney Trust Company. The world has become fast-paced, and we understand that you are busy. That's why we offer a banking experience that's as simple and stress-free as can be. Kearney Trust goes beyond convenient locations and good customer care to offer banking services that make managing your finances quicker and easier than ever before. Online, bill pay, e-statements, and mobile banking are available to give you a positive banking experience so you can get back to your life and activities. Kearney Trust also provides capital to people and businesses so they can achieve their goals. Whether you know exactly what you want or just need someone to talk to about your dream, you can speak with them and work on that dream. You may just be getting off the ground or ready to move into your brick and mortar building. Kearney Trust will provide you and your business with the resources you need to succeed. Kearney Trust Company is your partner for success with 2 convenient locations in Kearney at 310 West 92 Highway and 701 Watson Drive in Price Chopper. The phone is 816-628-6666. Kearney Trust Company. Banking you can trust. Member FDIC.
And welcome back to Kearney Live. We're talking to Captain Will Akin with the Clay County Sheriff's Office. And we're going to talk a little bit about his campaign. But one of the things that we talked about when we left off before we went to break is we were talking about, and this will be our little Thanksgiving tip to the children. And that being one of the things that we were talking about during the break is that when you look at, when you're younger, because we were all, believe it or not, at one time we were younger, you look at some of the adults and you think, well, that's just not achievable to me, or that's
right.
That doesn't even seem, I could never fly a helicopter.
Right.
I could never work on the sheriff's department. I could never be a teacher. I could never, because you haven't done anything to get there yet. You haven't had time. Everything is achievable. You just have to take your time to get there. And then,
well said.
The other thing that kind of keep this in mind, because this is what happens to adults. I know because I've been there. They say the last statistic I heard is that adults will change their path every 7 years as a general rule. Adults even get to a point where, I want to be this, and then 7 years later they're like, I don't want to do this anymore, but you know what I want to do is that over there, and they switch and change.
Yep.
So don't feel like because you wanted to be an architect and be like Art Vandelay. For those you don't know,
we got the reference.
Do you know who Art Vandelay is?
No, I don't.
Okay, all right, let's keep it rolling.
So
here.
for those of you who do, I want to be, an architect, and then you change your mind. There's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Just keep plowing forward. So that said, Captain Akin wants to be sheriff. So you're running for sheriff. I guess the first good question there is why? What made you want to be? What made you say, I want to be the sheriff of this county?
Early on in my law enforcement career, I always thought, wow, what kind of difference could I make if I was in that position? And so fast forward, nearly 17 years later, here I am. I'm running for sheriff, but I love the Clay County Sheriff's Office. I love Clay County. I've moved 38 times in 44 years, lived in 10 states and 3 countries. And when we planted roots here, we planted roots with the intent of never leaving again. We have a fantastic sheriff's office. We've got nearly 220 employees that are just doing great work despite the circumstances. And so I don't want to leave.
Well, and that is a good point. The sheriff's department in Clay County is well thought of. It's a highly regarded sheriff's department, not just here, but around the state and even around the country for that matter. So with that being said, you're following you're going to have
big shoes.
Yeah,
big
that's
shoes,
right.
Absolutely.
So what is it, going forward? What do you want to do? What do you want to see? How do you want to take a sheriff's department that's doing well and continue to build on that tradition?
You're absolutely right. Big shoes to fill. And the current sheriff, Paul Visco, he's a mentor of mine. I've known him for almost 9 years. I mean, we actually worked in Afghanistan together. And, he's done a lot of great work, and he's ready to pass the torch, and I'm ready to accept. But I want to continue to build on the great things that he has done. The reputation of the sheriff's office, for one, we're in high regard, or held in high regard. And, but that's not without the challenges from law enforcement. We're no exception. And so when I talk about community, I don't just talk about the rural area of Clay County, which is predominantly where our responsibility is at. But, all the agencies, the municipalities, they're experiencing the same hardships. And rather than us trying to do it in a silo, apart from each other, I want to be able to work with everyone and continue to collaborate with everyone. There's a lot of bad things happening in the country, and we're no exception as far as the Northland in Clay County. I think I was told that Clay County is the second fastest growing county in the state of Missouri. Well, when you have growth like that, all the problems come with it. So I would much rather work together with the other municipalities than just try to go it alone and just kind of, continue to foster those relationships.
Right. You talked about, when we were off the air, you talked about working together with the school districts, which to me, what does that look like? How does the sheriff's department work with the school district?
So most of our school resource deputies are in the North Kansas City School District, but there are other committees or groups that work together to share best practices, share information. But I want to continue to foster that because we got to do what we have to do to keep our kids safe. And, doing it together is going to make us better. It's going to make us stronger, and we'll be able to meet that mission, that goal and that mission. And we just have to do it together and just continue to foster those working groups to make sure that everything that we have available to us is available to everyone.
I'm going to shift gears just a little bit here, Will. You have, in fact, under the heading of mental health here on the printout I have from your publicist, it says that, and this is pretty serious. Personally, it says that you have lost a partner to suicide, a friend to suicide, and countless other law enforcement and military losses to suicide. That's some heavy stuff right there.
Yeah.
So you've done, and you are involved in, it looks like several organizations to help prevent that sort of thing. We'd like to see it stop altogether, wouldn't we?
Absolutely. Those numbers are higher every year from self-inflicted,
right.
To suicide than line of duty deaths,
right.
for law enforcement and first responders, if you really go out a little broader.
Right. You're co-chair for the Tri-County Crisis Intervention Team, and they serve Platte, Clay, and Ray counties. What are your duties there? What are you doing?
If you could just boil it down, it's bridging the gap between law enforcement in my role, in my capacity,
right.
Bridge the gap between law enforcement and the mental health community.
Right.
And so, policing has changed over the years, and the resources don't come with it, like social workers. So instead of just answering a call for service and we're there, we take care of the situation, we leave, we're finding more and more that we're spending a lot more time with people who don't necessarily need to go to jail, but they do need resources.
Mm-hmm.
And we're trying to educate law enforcement as to what resources are available, through, let's say, Tri-County Mental Health.
Right.
And some other organizations, and just putting those pieces together to make sure that instead of just taking people to jail and them not getting the resources or the help that they need, let's get them the help that they need. But it does take more time.
And I don't mean to put you on the spot here. You may or may not know the answer. Is the number and not just in emergency responders, but in general, the suicide number, is it going up? Because it seems like it is, but I don't remember what the statistical number, and I didn't know if you knew.
I don't know the number exactly, but I think the trend is that the numbers are increasing.
Right,
and
I think that's right.
Yeah.
Well, and the interesting thing was, and I know we're going into the holiday season, and traditionally the numbers do go up over the holiday season, and I noticed that one of the impact reasons had to do with like social media and that thing where you look at social media and everybody's life is all grand and everything else, and you're thinking mine isn't. But what you're not seeing, you don't see what goes on behind the scenes. No. So I may post a picture of my family having the world's greatest day, but what you don't see is before that happened, all my car got wrecked, I hit a deer,
right.
A lot of pressure,
whatever.
Like
that. You just don't see that. So I guess the point of that is, once again, you may be down, but you're not out. So go talk to somebody. I know you guys have resources available that have never been available like they are today. I mean, there are resources everywhere.
And, you know, the CIT training isn't just to help others. It's also self-care as well, you know, looking out for each other. I remember when my partner and I worked, we were in Phoenix, Arizona with the Phoenix Police Department. He would always make comments. And I just chalked it up to be, you know, that's part of his personality. You know, he's just self-coping. He's dealing with it. And it wasn't until somebody had asked me, hey, do you know where your partner is at? He actually left the department, but he made some threats against some of the employees. If he was ever going to pull the trigger, if you will, that he was going to come back and he was going to cause harm to others. And I remember when they asked me if I knew where he was at, my heart sank.
Oh, boy.
And then it started, you know, the flood of emotions. It was like, you know what? I saw this coming, but why didn't I say anything?
Right.
And there's a stigma to that. You know, if you say something because you're sincere and you want your partner, you want your coworkers to get help, a lot of people are reserved with that because you don't want to make them the problem. You know, it's, they've got a mental health issue. And I think once we cross that barrier and we destigmatize it and understand that, man, law enforcement, they experience things day in, day out that are traumatic. And
I can't imagine.
I mean, what normal person wouldn't be impacted by that? So, you know, it's about self-help as well.
What, you know, when you think about somebody being just so hopeless that they feel the need to just check out, to take their own life at a level of hopelessness that I can't imagine, that if that is your, if that's the solution to that level of hopelessness, what are the things that you're doing now that, as you speak to younger people, as you speak to your colleagues in law enforcement, what are some of the messages of hope that you give fellas that and men and women, you know, who might be going down that path that your partner did back in the day?
Yeah, you know, I think a lot of it has to do is just looking out for each other.
Yeah,
because I think when we're in that dark spot, I don't think we can recognize anything else. And I think not to push the responsibility on anyone else. I mean, we really have to recognize things that are bothering us early before we get to that dark spot, but then also looking out for each other and just saying, hey, it looks like you have something on your mind. What's going on? Oh, no, I'm fine. No, you're not. Let's go have a cup of coffee.
Right.
And just calling them out.
So there are signs that you see that you're aware of. Are they standardized signs that are sort of clinical in nature, or is it just a sort of an urge or something that you sense?
Well, you know, over the years, I mean, there are lists that exist, you know, and one that comes to the top of my mind is, hey, you know, I bought this $1,500 TV. I just want to give it to you. And they start giving stuff away. And so because of what's going to happen to it after I'm gone. And that's just one of many things. I don't know if there's an accurate list that you can check off. Okay, they've said this, they've said this, they're going to kill themselves.
Yeah.
I think it's more of a subtleness, and you just have to be aware. And that's why with CIT training, it's not necessarily to help others, I mean, which it is, but it's also recognizing those signs for each other. And so,
yeah. And one of the things that's interesting is having dealt with, you know, the people that have gone through that have contemplated suicide, is the interesting thing is at that point of their life, everything seems hopeless. And it's like, there's nothing I can do to get out of it. The people who got help and then later went on and everything was fine, not all, but a lot of them look back and they'll tell you that when they look back at it, it really wasn't that big of a deal now. It was kind of insignificant.
That makes it even more tragic.
Yeah. So what you are doing a great job with in the CIT stuff, which is relatively new. I mean, it's been around for a while, but it's
yeah, actually I went through my first CIT training course in 2005 with the Phoenix Police Department.
Okay. So to me, that's new, but yeah, I mean, and it's getting better and more accepted and everything else. But the key being, if you can break that cycle, if you can get in there and stop it, it gets better. I mean, I know it seems insurmountable at the time, but having talked to people who've gone through it, and then you go back, and some of them will even say, they go, you know what, it was kind of had to do with this and that and the other, but that it just wasn't as big of a deal now as they thought it was then.
If you can get them to look beyond the darkness at that very moment, and to look down the road and just say things are going to get better.
Yes.
That there's going to be a day when you're going to be celebrating how wonderful your life is. If you can just overcome at this one moment, man, if you can be there for that person at that time.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with perspective too,
Right.
because when those individuals are able to come out on the other side,
Right.
they're able to look back and say, "Oh wow, I've actually made it through worse things than that." And,
Yes.
I remember being overseas in Afghanistan as a contractor where, explosions that were meant for me, or hearing bullets tumbling through the air as they pass my head. And so I take that now, and yeah, I'm not perfect. Yeah, I post great stuff, nice stuff, happy stuff on social media, but
Right.
man, I'm able to put things in perspective
Yeah.
now. No matter how hard it is right now, it could always be worse. But that's how I manage it. Not everyone can do that.
But you take it. So this is a good thing, people, because it's hilarious to do this. Take something that happened to you about a year ago that you were just wrapped around the eye. I mean, you were just beside yourself. And now you don't even remember what it was.
Yeah.
But
No, that's right.
every single person can do it. They
That's
can sit there and
perspective.
think,
Absolutely.
Right.
man, I was torqued over this, and then it either turned out to be nothing, it wasn't what you thought it was, it got worked out, whatever it was. So stopping the cycle.
Right.
That's I don't know what the term they're using now for it is, but if you can stop it and get in there, like you said, it may be something simple like a cup of coffee or something.
Yeah, I think it's, intervention's the biggest thing. Don't be afraid to call your partner out, your
Right.
coworker out. You're not trying to be mean. You're just saying, "Hey, I recognize something that you
Right.
possibly don't, and we should go talk about it." Or
Okay.
find somebody who's specially trained for that. We have peer support deputies, and more law enforcement agencies are having those peer support groups who have that little extra training, who you don't even have to confront your coworker. You can say, "Hey, peer support officer, deputy, hey, can you go check on this guy?"
Right.
And then let them do it.
Well said. I wish we had all day. I'd love to have you come back. Captain Will Akin with the Clay County Sheriff's Office went from high school dropout to Dr. Will Akin, sitting right here today, which is just fantastic. Can't say enough about all the good things that you've done, and we sure appreciate all of the law enforcement folks in Clay County and Kearney, Missouri, and all over the country for that matter. We are big fans of law enforcement here at 102.7 FM. You've been listening to Kearney Live. Jim?
Mike, before you go, happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving to you, and thanks for reminding me. Don't eat too much. Okay, go ahead. This is the one day where you can eat too much.
And happy Thanksgiving to you, Brian, and everybody else out there, all of our sponsors, everybody else, everybody in Kearney, everybody
Indeed.
listening across the country on the MyTuner radio app.
We are blessed.
Have a good Thanksgiving. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me, guys.
See you next week.